and she's working at PA. And Keola also I had the pleasure of having Keola in my class 2 years ago as well. So our paths have crossed many different times, and we're really happy for you to take time out of your busy schedule, Keola, to be here with us today.
It's a pleasure, Matt. It's just the time where I can talk.
You,
Um, okay.
yep, you can talk. Actually, I was gonna do your bio, but
Oh,
why
go
don't you
ahead.
just give? Okay.
Yeah.
So Keola is she's currently the chief financial officer at the Philadelphia Parking Authority. And for those of you who don't know that PPA is actually the fourth largest parking management company outside of Tokyo, Paris, and New York. So that's globally. And part of her position, she's overseeing all of their financial operations, strategic planning, and advising their board of directors on fiscal policy and long-term growth. Previously, Keola held a couple of senior finance positions with the City of Philadelphia, including the Senior Director of Finance for the Commerce Department and Assistant City Treasurer. Notable achievements include spearheading the financial recovery post-COVID-19, strategically managing a $150 million operating capital budget to increase economic development opportunities in the Philadelphia region, and successfully diversifying the city's $8.5 billion bond portfolio. Keola also worked as a financial consultant at Clarify and as a financial educator at Pathways PA, demonstrating her commitment to financial literacy and education. She has also led various financial empowerment programs, including the Cities for Financial Empowerment funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies. Keola is a first generation college graduate, has served on boards, City Year here in Philadelphia, the Schuylkill River Development Corporation, CCP or Community College of Philadelphia, and the Community of Compassion CDC. She also is a Fels and has her MPA. I'm actually going to turn it over to Keola now to talk a little bit more about PPA. I'll just say it's a really big budget. It's a really big responsibility, and I think they're up to some really interesting stuff. But Keola, please.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And I just have to say before I get started, Matt mentioned that I took his class while I was at Fels, and the class was taught by him as well as Sade. And I will never forget one just following both of their careers and always being in awe of them and the things that they accomplished because the work is not easy. It has never been easy, but even in this climate, and I remember one day when I was assistant city treasurer, I was working pretty late, and Sade came into the building, had no clue who I was. This was about 2017. And I naturally just saw a person enter and I saw her, and I just couldn't believe it because these people who I have studied for so long now I get to experience, right? And Matt is another. And aside from just being a friend, I am also a client now, right? And it's just amazing to me how full circle things come. So I appreciate you guys for having me. And as Matt mentioned, so I'm at the Philadelphia Parking Authority, which was not a natural choice for me, if that makes sense. I have always been a finance person who so happened to have landed in government. But coming to the Philadelphia Parking Authority, I'll be honest, they reached out to me once and I declined the job because I thought I was going to be taking on another role in this current mayor's administration. But then things kind of changed. They offered the position to someone. That person had a medical issue, so they were back at square one. And a good friend who's a state representative in our appropriations chair here in Pennsylvania, Jordan Harris, he said, "These people keep calling me about you. Just have a conversation." And what I didn't know is that PPA, the Philadelphia Parking Authority, if you are from Philadelphia and maybe not, you have heard about the parking authority, and it's not always great things too. And I had the same feeling. So when they invited me into a conversation, I came with a what we're not going to do kind of attitude because I only had the public perspective of the Philadelphia
Mm.
Parking Authority. When I was actually assistant city treasurer, so as assistant city treasurer, I issued bonds on behalf of the city of Philadelphia, the Philadelphia International Airport, the Philadelphia Gas Works, and the Philadelphia Water Department. And at the time, the Philadelphia Parking Authority owned the garages of the International Airport. And I used to listen like a fly on the wall how they were trying to develop a plan because they didn't get the things that they needed from the parking authority's leadership team at that time. But I used to listen to these conversations about how they were developing a plan to get from under the Philadelphia Parking Authority. So I only had one perspective. So when I came in for my first conversation, I didn't know that the Philadelphia Parking Authority had new leadership. For the first time ever, we have our first Democratic board chair, whose name is Lynette Brown. And also we have a new CEO whose name is Rich Laser. And Rich actually comes from 20 years of working under former Mayor Kinney. And I was actually just sharing with Colleen, one of the things, first, when I walked into the parking authority, it felt like home. And I hated that for me because I came with an agenda. I came to tell the Philadelphia Parking Authority all about themselves. And I started to hear what they had to say and realize the vision that Rich Laser, who was only 1 year into his tenure, the vision he had aligned with what I would have had if I took the position. And I remember leaving, we had a few conversations, and I remember leaving the conversation, texting Jordan Harris to say, I hate that I think this might be a really great fit for me because where we are going, it's not the history of the parking authority. And that's what makes me so excited. I've only been in this seat at the parking authority for about 18 months, but everything that could have gone wrong in my first year as chief financial officer did. And so I have spent my first year essentially, what I'll say is paying for other people's decisions. The Philadelphia Parking Authority is 75 years old this year, and everything that could have shown up from decisions that were made probably even before I was born has shown up within this year. But I will say within the last month, I started to see the fruits of the labor and some of those things. We had a financial crisis. We experienced fraud of some sort. We have experienced technology downfall where our systems, you couldn't even pay a parking ticket. Our systems were down for weeks. I was on the PPA crisis crew where you had to meet twice a day, morning and night, every single day until it was resolved. When I was 3 months into the position, we had an audit that didn't go right. So not only am I getting to know the organization, but I'm also getting to know, everything about it. And the audit doesn't go well, but I just last week we presented to our board that the audit was the best it's ever been in over 30 years. And that's huge. That is huge for me. That's huge for my team. And it speaks a lot to how we are changing. We're focusing a lot on the culture here at the Parking Authority. You had a lot of people who don't feel good about their job and just little things like saying hello, inviting them to employee appreciation events, inviting them to holiday parties, whatever the case may be, to make this an atmosphere that feels welcoming for all. What I'll say also, just overall at the Parking Authority, some of the projects that we are working on are really mind blowing. Currently, we have a garage at 10th and Ludlow, which is located across from Jefferson Hospital, but also in the heart of the developments. If you've been in Philadelphia, you heard about the 76ers, they were trying to go to Market East, or you've heard about the developments that are happening within Market East. And we are a part of those conversations to acquire, rebuild, and develop parking facilities or just operations overall in Market East. Just within the last 3 weeks, we were in the news because a few years ago, the Greyhound station here in Philadelphia, they decided to not renew the lease. So if you are looking to if you are looking to travel by bus, you are likely getting on from the street. And so we wanted to be a partner, not just to the city of Philadelphia, but also to the residents. And we decided to volunteer ourselves to run the bus station, right? We are not gaining anything from it, but we wanted to be a part of a solution in order to get people off of uncomfortable environments. If you caught the bus and you're sitting on the curb currently in the rain, you're standing in the rain, your luggage is in the rain. So we wanted to build something that was safe for everyone. We've also developed so here at the Parking Authority, the budget that I oversee is $352 million annually, and that's across 20 different business entities. One of those entities we created is called Neighborhood Enforcement, where we work with the city of Philadelphia. For example, If there's an abandoned car on the street, we utilize our tow trucks and equipment to get those cars off of your street. Sometimes those vehicles, they're just genuinely abandoned, but sometimes they are blight to the community. Sometimes they are a part of an investigation because they might carry, and this has happened where we found dead bodies in the vehicles, right? So we wanted to offer ourselves to be a partner. Not It's not just about the tickets. The tickets have its own story that I've had to learn along the way, but how can we utilize our infrastructure to make this city a better place? We're getting into some affordable housing. We are also, oh my goodness, we're acquiring our own first parking garage in January. We are also working on affordable housing. We're working on EV, so all of our garages will be equipped with electric vehicle chargers. There's so many projects, but we have a vision, we have a plan, and the main goal is to hopefully and potentially get away from this narrative of just us trying to issue tickets, but be a real partner to the Philadelphia community.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say I completely agree. I'm also being Philadelphia resident, having worked with the city, seeing how PPA interacts with City Hall, but then also just friends, family, and myself. I've had my own tickets and run-ins, right? I'm sure everybody has.
I used to joke when I used to joke before I even thought about coming to the Philadelphia Parking Authority. Naturally, I have a behind the scenes personality. I am analytical. I am technical. I am a planner. I am all the things that you need not on the forefront. And I remember joking after paying a parking ticket and saying, if I ever ran for public office, I would run to be controller to investigate the Philadelphia Parking Authority. That's how much I was in opposition of the Parking Authority. So to be here, to actually love what I do, to love what our entire team is seeking to do, I have nothing to gain from that. It is truly the truth, right? And another thing about the Parking Authority, so our executive team is made up of 5 members. 3, including our CEO, are new, and we're all under 40.
Mhm.
And that is also, we have 3 that are under 40 and then 2 who are over 50. And
Mhm.
so most people here at the Parking Authority, you never leave. Most of
Mhm.
my staff, I have 6 directors, 70 indirect reports. Most people have been here on average for 20 to 25 years. And so you have these 3 people who are all under the age of 40. They've been here probably as close to the amount of time we've been born. And yet we are also the leaders who are navigating this place to the right place to go.
Yeah, I could sit here all day and talk about the transformative work that I think y'all are up to, and I do think you're putting parking, what people think of a parking authority and changing that definition. I think y'all are moving closer to being a development agency,
Yes,
definitely focusing more on the customer and public impact of your services and not just the revenue that you're collecting.
yes.
There's a lot of great stuff that I think y'all are doing, hence why we're here, right? And
Yep, yep, yep.
so before we talk more about some of that interesting stuff that you're doing in Parking Authority and some of the other stuff you've done in your past, I did want to bring up, I think I heard an important tidbit that I think the audience should hear, um, or we should reinforce as a point. You mentioned that your first year as CFO at PPA, everything that could have went wrong went wrong. I want to bring it up because that story, especially in public service jobs, when you're taking these big executive roles, whether it's a branch of government or a quasi agency, that is more often the truth than not.
Yeah,
We experienced it in council our first year. Like there's a vacuum of information, but even outside of that vacuum of information and trying to level set what's actually going on, what's the baseline here, you got it. You have to own all of the bad decisions and noise of prior years. So that first year is really just trying to understand where the noise is, where the bodies are buried, and fix a lot of it.
yeah,
And then that second year usually is the year is like, all right, we finally got to our baseline. Now we can start to actually do some of the stuff we actually wanted to do because we don't have to worry about, frankly, the headline risk of something coming out from somebody did 6, 7 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's important because I think that's a Fels thing. And I think that's part of what, we build here at Fells and what we build into people. It's not just the ability to do the work, it's the ability to have the confidence that you're going to get it right. And frankly, more often than not, Sade's been in those positions. I think I saw Ebony on the line. Ebony's been in those positions. It happens a lot. So, if anything, take away from anything Keola said in the first part of the conversation is like, don't be afraid to take these big jobs where there's a historical past. I think it's important to be aware of it, have an approach, but at the end of the day, Keola, we all knew, like I would have known that it wasn't your fault. Like everybody in the
Right.
industry is going to know it's not your fault,
And
right?
honestly, some of the things that I would add to that. So I I am 18 months within my tenure as CFO. So I came into, even though I was at the city of Philadelphia for nearly a decade prior to this, I was the new person coming into an establishment where they were comfortable with how they are doing things. Not that they didn't want to be better, but they were keeping the lights on, right? And even as things were going wrong for me, I remember one of my directors joked and she said, I know you can handle it, but man, this has been a tough year for you. And I never realized how tough the year has been because she's right. I could handle it because I tell people I am accustomed to the pace that I move at. And it was even faster when I was
Hmm.
at the city of Philadelphia. PPA is not even a third of the size of the city of Philadelphia. So I'm accustomed to this. But what I'll tell you, when I joined the Philadelphia Parking Authority, and I have some of my staff on here too, the first thing I knew in my head, if the data did not say so, I had no intentions on trying to change things because naturally that is what you want to do. As the new person, you have a fresh perspective, a fresh pair of eyes, and you just want to change the entire way of doing things. But as long as the data points me in a different direction, I was good with that because what I needed to focus on is building a relationship with the people who
Hmm.
were actually doing the work. As CFO, I'm not on the balance sheet, right? And I shouldn't be. As CFO, I'm not the direct person you'll talk to about your revenue, and I shouldn't be. But I needed to build that pipeline so that way those people felt comfortable to bring that information to me. So they knew that they had a champion supporting them in their operations, not someone who wanted to micromanage. And that made the work a little easier because as things were going wrong, I didn't have to focus on the operations. I could focus on solving the problem. And that is what you want when you are an executive coming into an organization. The other part, as things were going wrong, there were times where I did want to get rid of people because how could this have happened under your watch? But the first thing I did was seek mentorship from other people in the region because you're never going to be the first person to experience this. It's never just you. And so I would seek mentorship and guidance. And another thing, you are never too big. I joke and tell people I'm a baby CFO. That's my way of kind of, easing into the conversation of what I need in order to do the job. Because at this point, the job is the job. It has to get done, no matter if I know it or not. And so I would seek mentorship and guidance. At the city of Philadelphia, I wasn't directly involved in an audit. You had an accounting department for that. The audit is now, I'm not the responsible party, but I am the accountable party. I am the one who goes to our board of directors to say if it's going well or if it's not going well. And I didn't know how to come out of that. I wanted to just fire everybody and get a whole new system. And the first piece of advice I got was that is the worst thing you could do. So I had to sit uncomfortably, but trusting the process and allowing for my team to know that this is not just a me thing. This is a us thing. We're in this together. And if I did not get the mentorship and the guidance on that, I would have made a decision that put our entire organization at risk. And that was huge for me. And we came out of that successfully. The other thing I'll say, just because you find things a certain way doesn't mean it has to stay that way. I blow up every system I step into just naturally because I ask questions. I train my staff to understand the things that govern us to do what we do naturally. Just from finance, you have GASB, you have accounting practices. But even when I was at the city of Philadelphia, you had the charter, the home rule charter, the Philadelphia code. Understand these things because people will point you in the direction to do what someone else taught them to do.
Mhm.
And you don't know if you're doing the right thing or not. And your integrity really matters because some folks, and when we talk about my experience at the Commerce Department, you'll forget, depending on the crisis or the moment, some people forget who we serve. This is not my money. I protect the public's pocketbook at all times. That is my position. I tell my team, when I leave here, none of this belongs to me. I am just in the seat for the moment. And the same thing for everybody on this call.
Those are all great lessons. I think it's you spoke a lot about change management. You spoke a lot about leadership style. You can't really, it's hard to lead with that iron fists.
And what's the proverbs? If you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run as a team. You cannot do anything without a team. And that's the same thing. If you want to work in policy, I don't care on what level, if you are not a team player, you will get sat down really quick. Ask me how I know.
Oh, and
Ask
then
me how I
yeah,
know.
I mean, well, that's that
That's a
right.
general thing, right? But thinking about it in a policy,
Also being new, just
yeah,
being
yeah,
new
being
into a
new, right?
situation. Like you
Was
can't just go in there and all of a sudden
never.
you're just the smartest person in the room. Everybody's just going to listen, right? You
Yes,
gotta
yes,
integrate yourself and gain the trust of those people. I
yeah,
tell people you want to lead people, guide people to the water, lead them to the water.
yes.
You don't want to just give them the water.
Yeah, but I even think about, in this particular case, you have folks who want to work in policy of some sort. So maybe you're advocating for a client, you're talking to council members, you're talking to the mayor, you're talking to people to convince them to invest in your idea, to invest in you, to invest in your client, whatever it is that you're advocating for. And you can't do that by being one-sided. I asked Rob DeBoe. Rob DeBoe is the city's finance director, and I think he's on like his fourth or fifth mayor. And that alone is unheard of.
Fifth, at least.
His fifth mayor, that
I think my
alone is
mom's on
unheard
her
of.
fifth, so I
Right.
think
And
it's
I,
gotta
eh,
be.
right, exactly. So when I worked in the city's finance department as assistant city treasurer, Rob DeBoe was the boss to my boss at the time. And I remember asking Rob when I was at Fels because he was a professor. I said, Rob, how do you last this long? I don't understand because nobody does. And he said to me something so profound. He said, you just respect everybody's program. And there were times as a finance person, I get the luxury to be in a very fair and neutral position.
Mm-hmm.
None of these programs belong to me. I'm just funding it. And that
Right.
goes for council members as well. But I realized that when you respect everyone's program, you get a lot further. Because at the end of the day, you may not understand why they are advocating for what they are advocating for, but you still can respect it.
So your emotional intelligence is extremely high. I think that's the reason why you've been able to pick up on these things, understand these things, incorporate this into your style, and frankly get to where you're at your age.
Yeah,
That and that's another important differentiator. It's not just about the skills, it's about critical thinking aspect, the people
yeah,
aspect. Unless you're working alone, again, you gotta be able to, get people to at least effectively work with you with whatever the function is.
yeah,
I I want to pivot really quickly just to pick up on some of your experience with the city and commerce
yeah.
and maybe how some of that is different than PPA. What did you learn from the city that has helped benefits you at PPA. And then also the last thing is I would love for you to talk about your passion around financial literacy and some of the things you're doing around that as well.
Yeah, every position I had led me to the next. And one of the things that I learned really early when I was assistant city treasurer, so I joined the city of Philadelphia as assistant city treasurer. And what I realized is you never have enough resources to get the job done. So I was brought in to manage contracts, about 70 contracts to support the city's payroll, the city's pension payroll, the bond issuance of the city of Philadelphia, which was a combination of financial advisors, bond lawyers, the investment bank relationships, the banking relationships of the city of Philadelphia. And slowly I moved into managing the bond transaction. Then slowly I moved into managing the budget. At some point, I was writing testimonies and I was like, how did we get here? But what I started to realize, one, I've always been ambitious. And so what I started to realize is that there were just cracks in the foundation. And I always just tried to be the glue to keep things together. And if it wasn't for that budget experience, and I'll tell you the funny story. So we had a crisis when I was assistant city treasurer. You can Google it in the news. What we had learned just 1 year of being in the treasurer's office under this new administration at the time, we learned that for the last 10 years, they were not reconciling the city's bank account.
I was part of that group
Yes,
that had
you
to
were a
meet
part of
with
the
it.
task force.
Yeah.
And so when we learned about this issue, we just wanted to do good work. So we brought the issue to the forefront and with a plan. And there were so many people in city council at the time who were calling for my boss to be fired, though she was not a part of the issue that had happened over the last 10 years. She just wanted to correct it and move on with her life. It was a huge battle, but the way that it played out in the news was $30 million of missing money. And so at the time, we had brought in a firm, and how I say things go full circle. This firm that we brought in now is a part of the PPA's audit firm, which I learned that when I got here. So it's kind of nice to have familiar faces. But we brought in this firm to help us get out of this crisis at the time. And it was such a crisis that this external firm had offices within our office. Like they worked for us day and night to get us out of this issue. And I remember writing my boss's testimony at the time to say, so when she was bringing this issue to the forefront, I remember calling her to say, like, listen, girl, we could just leave. We don't have to break, like this was somebody else's issue. We don't have to make it our issue. And I was in my early 20s at the time, and she hung up on me, long story short. And she was like, I ain't so so that was a huge moment because that really set the foundation of my understanding of how to handle a crisis management. But when we were going through this situation, the person who managed our budget and all of the accounting functions in our office quit the day before we were going to city council to bring this matter to the public. He quit. So I had to do the budget because this person done quit,
I
right?
think I knew that.
Yeah, yeah, he quit, and it was the craziest thing, but I hope he is well. And so so he quit, and so now I had to do the budget with no budget experience for a municipality. So then I spend the rest of my years at the treasurer's office doing the budget. So that's about 3 years of municipal budgeting, and then this opportunity. I had like such a devastating situation where the boss that I had initially, she left, and then another person became the boss, and that person got indicted, right? And so I was like, I don't have time for this because now your work is being questioned, your integrity is being questioned, and a position opened up at the Philadelphia Department of Commerce for senior director of finance, and I was like, well, it got to be better than this. And I remember talking to Rob DeBoe, and he said, well, the Commerce Department done lost all of their funding due to COVID. So you can either stay in this world of indictment or you can go to the Commerce Department and help another issue. And I said, I'll go to the Commerce
You're not gonna
Department.
have no staff, but you can go
Yeah,
and help them
yeah,
out,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Pick your battle. And so I said, you know what? I'll try my chances at the Commerce Department. And honestly, managing bond issuance, the to me, the bond world is so technical, and you have to spend a lot of time getting to understand how to execute large dollars on behalf of your clients. I wanted out of it. I spent too much time understanding the water infrastructure, the gas infrastructure. I never signed up for this kind of stuff. I used to have to do tours to understand the because you need to understand what you're investing in. So I would
Mhm.
go to the Philadelphia International Airport and have to understand what they're doing to the terminals. It was just too much. And I said, you know what? I want to be with the small businesses. I'll take commerce. And I really did mean that, because the small businesses and just the community, no matter where I go, that will always be a part of my core mission. So I go over to the commerce department, which was like a crime scene within itself. Commerce was pretty much decimated at that time. They had a $50 million budget. Budget when I got there was three, and that was for staff and people. It was very traumatic. The staff at Commerce, who were amazing, they were exhausted because they were tasked with helping businesses during COVID-19, even to the point where they were preparing bags of hand sanitizer and equipment and supplies, which has nothing to do with what they do. But at that point of time, all hands on deck. And so for me, being in the commerce department, the first responsibility was to figure out where is the money. I benefited from understanding the system, and I was able to find money that never got spent, if that makes sense. So there was money in the system assigned to other initiatives, which were great initiatives at that time, but it never went out the door. So we use that money to start to build up based on our current priorities.
Mhm.
At that time, the priorities were, what items can we invest in that will bring back revenue to the city? Job creation, bringing businesses to Philadelphia, supporting our corridors, the small businesses that sit along those corridors. Another huge one. So I currently sit on the board of the Schuylkill River Development Corporation, which is just the trail that sits right between West Philadelphia. Well, now it's expanded, but you can get on it a lot of different ways. But the trail that leads from Center City all the way up to Southwest Philadelphia. Honestly, I ended up on that board because I helped them find $6 million to build out that trail. And for some people, it was unheard of. It was like magic money. But if you know the system and if you know how to navigate the system, this stuff just starts to make sense. And it actually is confusing to me how you didn't know there was $6 million sitting. But it is always an episode. Commerce was a huge episode of Merry Christmas, everyone, because nobody had the financial expertise to understand how you could leverage existing dollars that maybe they forgot about, or grant funding. That was another thing. Some of the programs were being funded by
Mhm.
grants. CDBG was a huge grant, community development, CDBG, community development block
Block
grant.
grant. Yep.
Yes, which is a federal grant. One of the
Mhm.
other things were, how can we get more of that? The city gets a pie of it. You won't know this stuff until you understand what governs what you do. I learned the city gets a pie. Commerce was just getting a small piece of the pie. How can we get more? What can we do to get more? We started putting more staff onto the CDBG grant. We started putting more programs on the CDBG grant. I started finding out that other departments who had CDBG money weren't spending the money, but the city was
Right.
required, no matter how they sliced up the pie, they had to spend all of the money. If this department isn't spending the money, then we can spend the money. And that's what
Right.
we did.
Yeah, you've
When I left, just one thing,
yeah, go ahead.
when I left the commerce department, commerce prepared me to be a CFO, because as this money started to come in, we had to figure out how to prioritize. And everybody had a different agenda. Everybody had a different vision. Some people wanted their program more than others. They didn't care about the core responsibilities or the priority at the time. I knew my mission at Commerce was done because I came in and they had 3 million. I left and they had over 250. I don't need to see it go to 500, because Mayor Parker, who was coming in, I knew she was a huge advocate and she was just going to make it bigger. I was fine. I was pleased with what we did because I don't need to see it get more. I've seen it start from the bottom.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, and I think all of your collective experience, like seeing things, having the treasurer's role, even before the treasurer's role, you already had an understanding of budgets, balance sheets to an extent. Then you got the treasurer's role, you got the very technical understanding of literally via uh, you know, POS, whatever it is, the ordinances, the POS, like you can only spend based on this timeline, and if you don't, y'all are in trouble. You got to give all this money
Yep,
back plus penalties, right? So that's
yep,
a and then if the city misspends, they everybody blames the treasurer, even though it might not be the treasurer's fault. They all blame in the treasurer's office. So you're in a more of the compliance,
yeah,
diligence role there.
yep,
And then commerce, you're right, you're more in a budget role. And budgets, look, budget directors, and Keola brought it up. If you take it another level up citywide, they're mostly known as no people. They have to
yeah,
say no more than yes. They
yeah,
don't like saying no because they're not running the programs. But
yep,
there is a finite pot of money that needs to be split up at least for that year. And I think Keola used a great word earlier. She said, just respect everybody's program. That when I was CFO of council, I had to respect every council member's wish. Doesn't mean that it all was going to get 100% funded. In fact, rarely anything got
yep,
100% funded. But if you respect their priority, where they're coming from, when you have to go back to them and deliver news that they might not get everything, it comes off a lot differently than if you didn't respect
hmm,
their request to
yeah,
start.
yeah.
And so those are some good things, and I can see why that corporation might not have found that 6 mil because they haven't had the experience and seen the things that you have.
And
So they don't,
honestly, I
you
sit
know,
on a lot of boards, and it's the same thing. Everyone has this, especially in this climate right now. Everyone needs a government bailout right now. And they all have this perspective based on what they're hearing amongst their colleagues. But no, most of these organizations are missing one, the point, but two, the expertise to get you to the yes.
mhm. Yeah, you bring up great points, and the CDBG thing, a lot of people didn't know, and some of these nonprofits don't know either. That pot of money comes to the city as one pot.
Yes,
There has to be internal advocacy to get part of that pot.
yes.
Some people just didn't know that.
I
So,
tell people my experience from the treasurer's office to the commerce department, I was cutting the check to now being on the other side of the check.
right.
And honestly, that's what brought me to Fels because now being on the other side of the check, it's like, wait, we gotta fight for money. What is this?
Yeah,
And
right.
I didn't understand. I didn't
Yeah,
understand.
you gotta
You
advocate.
gotta like what? You have to advocate for money. It's not just given because we do great work.
Right,
And
right,
that was really hard for me to digest because naturally I am a finance person. I just
right,
work in the government setting. I'm politically adjacent.
right.
And I did not understand policy. That is what brought me to Fels because naturally I would have gotten an MBA, right? But I wanted to understand how our elected officials, how the executive branch operates. Like, how does this make sense to you? It doesn't. One plus one equals two. I mean, one plus yes, one plus one equals two to me. Wow. But it just wasn't making sense to me. Why wouldn't you fund this program? And that is Fels is where I learned how policy actually works. We established programs when we determined the funding, but the policy piece was really new to me and dealing with elected officials, I knew them personally, but I never had to advocate for funding. And I learned how to do that. I learned how politically driven people think as a result of Fels.
Yeah, you cannot separate politics from policy because of the
Mm-mm,
decision makers.
no.
That's a big lesson. And by the way, you don't I have an MBA. You don't need it anymore. I mean, like the MBA is good.
I'm good now.
The MBA would be good if you didn't have those executive roles yet, but you learn
Yes,
pretty much
yes,
everything you will learn in MBA. So
yes.
I just wanted to let you know
Yeah, I appreciate
that.
that.
You just save your money. Um, anyhow, I think we actually have some audience questions, Keola, if you want to,
Oh, perfect.
if we're ready to pivot.
Yeah, we do. And then we can hop back. So maybe we'll start with first going to combine two, but Peter Manda, Fels class of 2011, asked, and then I'm going to add a little bit from Sabrina Khan, class of 2025, who also asked a similar question. So um, Peter started with, what are the development agency activities that they do at the parking authority? For instance, what are other revenue streams outside of tickets and garage fees? And is the authority engaged in transportation connected housing? And then Sabrina kind of talking on that, saying, you mentioned that you're becoming involved in affordable housing. Could you please expand on that? Tell us about some of those projects and initiatives at the PPA.
Yeah, Matt said something really interesting that about us being a professional agency. And honestly, my dream would be a name change, because our goal right now is moving into the space of modality, right? Um, Things that are accessible for everyone, no matter your mode of transportation. So when it comes to just some of the development that we're working on, so we work closely with the city in all of their bike efforts. So we work closely with the streets department when it comes to that. One of the things that I do know, and I'm not directly on this project, but there's been a lot happening on Pond Street with Vision Zero. And so the parking authority is really involved in that. When it comes to the housing piece, so this one is something that we're still working on. Let's say it's a two-part answer. So one, we are building new parking garages, which is not a fine, but if you choose to use parking because there are no street parking options, you can park in our garage, pay a fee like you would any other company, but also building infrastructure that allows for affordable housing to go above it.
Mhm.
That is one aspect. And we're really excited about that. The second aspect is that we have parcels of land. And the question has been, what can we do with the land to make the space a better place?
Mhm.
And that is where the affordable housing piece has come in. So we've worked closely, we have existing land, but we're also working closely with the Philadelphia Land Bank to possibly take on more and build affordable housing there. One of the things that I'll say, I had a really great time when I was working at the city of Philadelphia at the treasurer's office because we issued bonds for affordable housing. It's actually the Restore, Repair, Renew program. And one of
Oh,
the
I
amazing,
helped create that one.
yeah, we did that in
That was a nice one.
2017.
That's
Um,
still around?
it's
They're
still
still
around. It's at
all right.
PhDC currently. But for me, it's like a dream come true because before I ever went into government, I worked at a nonprofit doing financial literacy. And I never thought I would leave that job. Helping people get out of debt, helping people become first-time home buyers, helping people build up their credit, helping people save for a down payment. That is really who I am. Like I do that for free forever. Like that will always be a core part of who I am. I even think um, my ability to communicate, I don't think finances should be complicated. And my ability to communicate in very plain language, the financial health of an organization really was rooted in my start with financial literacy.
Mhm.
That is, I just love that. So I say all that to say the fact that we are exploring that at the parking authority, dream come true.
Yeah, I was also gonna say back to the housing thing for a second. Like what y'all are doing is you have a lot of land, like you said, assets. You can leverage your relationships with that land when
Yep.
people come. I'm
And
not gonna
and
talk about
the
any confidential projects, but wanted to
Yeah,
ask me, okay, you can
yeah.
build some
I
housing
mean,
on
but
that
even
too.
some of the things we share, the Philadelphia Parking Authority, our board chair is also the board chair of the Philadelphia Housing Authority. So that's
Mhm.
just a natural brother-sister relationship, if you will. They have like this joke, who can outpace who? I don't get into that. But even when we talk about potentially building above our garages, they would also be factor, PHA would also be factor into that. That is what they do.
Mhm.
We're just getting into the game of that, hopefully.
No, I think that that highlights the partner that y'all want to
Yeah,
be and are turning
exactly.
into.
Exactly.
And it's not really it's not it's unique in terms of the parking authority starting to enter that game, especially here regionally.
Yes.
But there are some interesting things going across the country because, most
Yes.
cities, especially since COVID, have a growing housing crisis. Philadelphia's always had one. We've always kind of known about it. Frankly, um, people might not feel this way locally, but Philly's actually very ahead of the curve when it comes to a lot of their affordable housing policies and
Yes.
the funding for affordable housing. And frankly, I know if you're just looking at us in a vacuum, you're like, it's slow. What are you talking about? But relative to other places,
Yeah.
they have a better handle on it.
Yep.
Um, Other places are actually running into bigger issues when it comes not just affordable housing, workforce housing. Like they have public employees who can't even live within two
Mm.
hours of their city. I say all that to say, like, we've seen interesting stuff like with new stadium developments attaching affordable housing to it. Like anything that cities and leaders of cities can try to make a requirement to build more housing. They're starting to do that, even with other type of development projects. So,
And one thing I'll
mhm.
say, Matt, none of this work that we are doing or moving towards doing, myself, my CEO, the entire new executive team, we came with the relationships of the folks who approve the laws that allow us to do what we do. And it makes it so much easier, again, when you establish those relationships. I built those relationships before I even started at the city of Philadelphia. So just
Right.
naturally transitioned over to the parking authority. You have other parking agencies across the world because there is a such thing as international parking agencies. And we go to these parking conferences and we are modeled after because they want to know how can they do some of the things that we've been authorized to do. Again, we have this team called the Neighborhood Enforcement Unit, who are specifically responsible for removing the blight within the community. When the Northeast plane crash happened, we were on the site towing cars with our equipment. Like that is how much of a partner we want to do, but we can't do any of that without ordinances and laws that allow for us to do that.
So important, especially being a state
Yes,
controlled agency
yes,
inside the city of Philadelphia. That was a
yes,
critical point.
yes.
Colleen?
I'm just going to jump in because we got a lot of questions
All
in here.
right.
So, and
Yeah.
I know we're going to be tight on time, but this is terrific. So I'm going to combine a couple too. So Sydney Singh, who is a fellow in public health department and working for the city, and also Nicole Mahaya, who is Fels 23 grad, kind of asked similar questions about one, advice on moving up within like the city of Philadelphia department, and also as a young professional and minority woman newly stepping into leadership, she'd also love to learn from your experiences. What challenges stood out to you as you advanced your career, and how did you work for them, and your approach to sort of decision making when resources are limited, especially right now? So kind of those.
Resources being limited never stopped me. Again, I met the needs even beyond my job description. One thing, I am a product of good managers and good mentors. They always knew that all I needed was the recommendation. All I needed was the sponsorship. They already knew I wasn't staying because naturally I am a progressive person. And so they knew that there was only a matter of time before I moved up. And not that I always made it clear, but one thing I always did was kept my head down. I kept my head down and understood what is needed and how could I fulfill the need. I also come from a mindset where now I talk about this with my staff, is that my number one job was to make the person I reported to look good. And I say that from a very selfless, no ego perspective, because if you help them drive their mission and priorities forward, the hope is that they'll help you do the same. And I have benefited from that. I've also benefited from just getting to know people outside of my individual space, my individual department, my individual sector. I remember at some point, I didn't even work at the city, but I was like, man, all of my friends are from government. How is this possible? And I thought at the time getting into the city was impossible. It was so hard at that time.
Still is hard.
It still is hard,
That's what I'm
right?
saying. It still
And
is hard.
but as soon as I got
Yeah.
in, the relationship started to develop organically. It is such a blessing to be known for your hard work. And I will focus on that.
I
Yeah,
think that's great. Can I just say one thing, Colin, before we move
yeah,
to the last question?
yeah.
I think the hard work thing is important. That's like a prerequisite.
Yeah.
I agree, especially in public service, managing up is probably one of the
Yep.
quickest ways for you to move up quicker.
Yep.
If you
I
learn how
had
to
a
manage up effectively,
Yep. Every boss I've had, someone has told them they were going to take me. Even in this current role, the mayor told my boss in front of his face the same thing. And I never utilized that as a moment to, I shy away from things like that. But I just think when you focus on the work, when you become the expert at what you do, people will see it.
yeah, and that expertise is important, especially earlier in your career. Learn the skill set,
Yes.
learn the work. The leadership comes. You learn the
Yes.
leadership from the mentors, from the coaches, from observing,
Yes.
listening. Try to listen more than you speak. Like things like that. In my opinion, the leadership kind of comes. You, when you first get into the city or a government position, learn the job, like,
It,
and
it,
be a sponge. Like that is once you get that reputation, Keola's absolutely right. You want people to go to your boss and say, I want her. And then they
yep.
argue about, well, you can't poach her. That's where you want to be. Because then now your boss knows you can leave
Yep.
also. So it gives you
When
more
I,
leverage with your
yep.
boss as well.
When I joined the treasurer's office, my boss at the time told me she never, since she left the treasurer's office back a long time before that, she never had to apply for a job. Everything came by way of a recommendation.
Yeah, you're in
To
that
that, real
category.
quick, one other
But,
question kind of related from Rosie Driscoll from class of 27, asking like, how did you know when? So it sounds like you set yourself up well, but and combined with another question, just sort of knowing when is the right time to leave. Was there any guiding, principle you use?
I knew, I mean, the scenario has always been different. When I was at Clarify, I knew it was time. When I was at the city, I knew it was time, and I just followed whatever showed up. But the thing is that it's really hard to be in a job that you hate. And I remember being at Clarify, knowing that there was nothing left I could give because there's only so many times you can tell a person don't buy another coffee until you realize that it's a minimum wage issue.
yeah.
Right. And I was so miserable because I was ready to do something bigger, but nothing bigger was happening. But what I started to do, and I did this also when I was leaving the treasurer's office, find the small things that, or change the direction, right? Change your attitude, change your mindset, and find ways where you can enjoy the moment until it's your time to go.
Hmm.
The other scenario I'll give when I left the commerce department, I knew it was time. I was only in that role for 3 years. I graduated from Fels and then I left. Actually, I graduated from Fels. I did executive coaching and then I left. And that executive coaching was helpful because I didn't realize how much I needed to prepare to also have executive presence. I thought I had it. So
Yeah.
then so I knew it was time to go because sales elevated me, the executive coaching elevated me. And as I told you all, I was already prepared to be a CFO. I was doing the work without being paid for it. I knew I was ready to be a CFO.
That's a common theme too. Like doing the job before you get the job is sometimes something
Well, and
people
when you
don't
say
want
that
to
though,
hear, but it
right,
is if you want it, at least it worked out for both of
right.
us that way.
But
So
what you're saying is demonstrate the skill set. You
correct.
don't wait until you get into the seat to show you can hold the seat. They have to see the potential before you get in the seat. You have to test drive the vehicle before you decide to buy it. You
And
don't
and
just
that
go to the dealership and say, I want that car and I'm leaving with that car.
and
And
showing that ambition alone
yes,
is going to put you in a different
yes,
category. But yeah, and I think it's one of those like, not try not to get jammed up in the linear.
Yes.
Everybody thinks their career is supposed to go straight line linear. It doesn't really work that way. Pay also doesn't necessarily
Yes.
work that way.
It doesn't, but it
Um,
could. But can I say something really quick? 'Cause I know we
sure,
have control of
absolutely.
time.
It's your time.
And don't compare your step one to someone else's step 10. Like
Mhm.
Matt and I, we've had some time doing this. I remember I sent an email. I went home crying one weekend because I had a typo in an email. Like I am further along in my experience. So don't compare because your step one could be someone else's step 10.
Yeah. It can exponentially jump.
Yes.
And it's hard to predict. If I gave a little tidbit for I had a 5-year plan when I left Fels that could surpass. I mean, that's not, it doesn't exist anymore. So
Yeah.
I think it's good to plan, right? It's good to have. I think one thing Keola does have though is a general knowledge and like awareness of what she wants to do. It might not be
Yeah.
specifically this or that role, but she knows she kind of wants to work in finance. She knows she wants to do something that has public impact. And frankly, Keola wants to keep stepping up in terms of responsibility. So I think having guiding principles is important, but opportunities are going to come and go. That's where the mentors are really important, the people in your trusted circle. You never know when they're come up, but that you got to lean on those people, that network they'll help. They'll also, your instincts will kick in like, oh, okay, good opportunity. I'm not learning that much in this job anymore. This job isn't challenging me anymore. Time to move, right? Bosses not getting along with the boss, time to move, right? There can be family changes, time to move, right? There could be situational changes too. It's not always just what you want to do in your career. Sometimes your life circumstances
And
help.
even in those moments, still be a sponge. When I was preparing for this conversation, I found a note that I was writing when I was assistant city treasurer. I started that note in October of 2017 of all the tips my boss would tell me at that time. And this is how I just naturally operate as a person. I text him right before this conversation with a screenshot and just said thank you because those foundational principles that were embedded in me early in my career, I still do that because no matter where I go, no matter what I do, my foundational values, they won't change.
That's very David Cohen-ish, right there. That's a good one. Uh,
Yeah.
Colleen, do we have any
We do I know
final?
we could talk all night, but
um,
that is I love that. And I guess I will thank all the students and audience members for joining in the questions. Matt, I don't know if you have a final, question, but I think you shared some terrific advice specific to your work and the work of the PPA, but also just like leveraging your career, which you've done an amazing job at. And I know particularly our students are looking and listening to that and hoping to follow. It's
and if we didn't get to the questions, you can share my contact information. I'm happy
awesome.
to connect with anyone in person or by email, whichever works.
That's wonderful. Terrific. I
So,
will.
so Keola, before we let you go, do you have any final thoughts? Do you want to leave with the group or final tips?
I mean, honestly, I would just say trust the process. Everything you want will come in due time. Do not jeopardize your integrity. Enjoy this time at Fels because the things that we are experiencing in this current climate, it is unbelievable. So enjoy this community that is going to root you and place you in your next step. It will all work out. I promise you.
Great tips. No shortcuts. What I heard out there. Put the work in. Thank you, Keola. This has been a great session. I'm one of your biggest fans. You've had a fabulous career. It's only growing. By the way, Keola was a National Bond Buyer Rising Star last year. I didn't even mention that earlier. Maybe I did, but the point being, that's huge. That is not a local award. That is a national. That's a very deep industry specific. I was one 2 years ago, by the way. I think 2 years ago.
And
So
there's only like four of us locally.
yeah, there's only been three from PFM in this 50-year history. So the point I'm trying to make, she's rising. Like Keola gonna be, I don't know, she's gonna be in the White House one day, probably. Just remember us. I might need a job, Keola, if you ever get down
You
there.
always got a job, Matt. You'll always have a job with me.
Well,
But
thank you so much. I'm sorry, go ahead, Keola.
no, I was just saying thank you. We were saying the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all. Thanks so much. This
All
has
right.
been
Take care.
Yeah,
all
have a
right.
great evening,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bye bye.